Good morning, and thank you for joining me for 5 good minutes. I'm Barry Bryson, and today we're going to be introducing the book of Philippians. Philippians is a prison epistle, and along with Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon, and 2 Timothy. But in this letter, unlike in the book of Ephesians, I think Paul is in actual jail. He's no longer under house arrest, as he is at the end of the book of Acts. He talks about the Praetorian Guard in chapter 1. He talks about members of Caesar's household that send them greetings, members that he has converted in chapter 4. So I think that his case has been adjudicated, and now he's in actual jail in Philippi. It is a love letter. The Macedonian churches of Philippi, Thessalonica, and Berea are the jewels in his crown. He loves these congregations, and he has an uncomplicated, loving, and supportive relationship with all of them, which is interesting because his time in Macedonia, following the Macedonian call, the time that we read about in Acts chapter 16, was difficult. He goes to Philippi first. He converts Lydia, the seller of purple. He's very successful. And because of his success, he ends up in a Philippian jail and being tortured there. And we have that account in Acts chapter 16. And we know about the earthquake and the conversion of the Philippian jailer. But he's only in Philippi a few weeks when he goes on to Thessalonica. He's only there a few weeks whenever mob violence sends him to Berea. And he's only there a few weeks before he has to leave for Achaia. And I'm sure at the time, he probably felt like a pinball in a pinball machine. But over time, we come to realize, as does he, that these churches that were born in turmoil and with whom he spent so little time become the jewels in his crown. He's written this letter because they have sent him a gift and through Epaphroditus. In fact, in chapter 4, he mentions that they've been sending him gifts since he went to Thessalonica all those years ago. And he's very thankful for their gift. This letter is loving. This letter is comfort food. It's home cooking. And when we spend time in this letter, we are nourished, we are warmed, we are fed, because it's just full of love. So many verses that we know so well. Chapter 1, verse 6, I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of his appearing. Chapter 1, verse 21, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Chapter 2, verse 5, have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Chapter 3, verse 14, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call in Jesus Christ. Chapter 4, verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Chapter 4, verse 8, finally, brethren, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there's any excellence, anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things in your mind. And then chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. These are verses that just underpin our Christian life and that we return to again and again, that pop into our heads when we need them most. A couple of things about this book I want to point out. In chapter 2, he has that beautiful theological and inspirational section where he talks about the mind of Christ, and he gives us the 7 demotions that Jesus underwent to end up on the cross and then to be glorified by God. And then he follows that up immediately with 2 young men, their own, Epaphroditus and Timothy, who exemplify the mind of Jesus Christ. In chapter 3, we have an autobiographical section where he really expresses his heart, his reason to be, more clearly than any place else, except perhaps Romans chapter 1, verse 16. I want to know Jesus. I want to be conformed to his death. I want to know the fellowship of his sufferings so that I can share in the resurrection of the dead. Then in chapter 4, he talks about our Christian living. And chapter 4, verses 4 through 8, heavens. I mean, if we could just read these verses every day, we'd be so well fed. And then these loving farewells where he talks about the folks who are there saying goodbye, especially those of Caesar's household. Verse 22. Well, we do know, as it was said in Acts, at the end of the book of Acts, Paul in Rome, even though he's in jail, is unhindered. He loves these folks. They love him back. And we bask in the glow of that love and are fed by it when we read this book. So dip into it every day. Thank you for joining me for 5 good minutes. And tomorrow we'll talk about the book of Colossians.